French police say at least 5 migrants, including a small child, died, apparently drowning while attempting to cross the English Channel from France to the UK. The discovery comes just hours after Britain's parliament passed a controversial bill to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak insisting the first flights carrying migrants will leave within weeks, but legal challenges to the legislation are expected. Well, our UK correspondent Birgit Maass, she's following events for us in London. She joins me now from Westminster. Birgit, the Prime Minister and his government, they finally managed to get this legislation passed. The law is now on the books. So what happens next?
Many question marks really still remain when it comes to this Rwanda policy. There are practical questions. So many asylum seekers are actually not in detention centers. They are in hotels or private accommodation. So people could try and go underground to evade those deportations. And then there are lots of legal questions. Asylum lawyers, migration groups, NGOs, they will try and argue at the British courts that their individual clients might face harm if they are being deported to Rwanda. So they know all these individual cases behind the statistics, and bear in mind that a majority of those coming into the UK via these small boats historically actually had a claim to asylum. So there will be legal challenges, not just in the UK courts, but also potentially at the European Court of Human Rights. And these are, like, many challenges are ahead, even though the Prime Minister is actually conceding that this policy of deterrence can only work if there are regular flights taking off from the UK to Rwanda. And that really remains to be seen. Will it be a plane here and there, or will there really be regular flights starting, as the Prime Minister hopes, in 10 to 12 weeks?
And you know as well as I do, the Prime Minister, he has pledged that the first flights deporting migrants to Rwanda will leave in 10 to 12 weeks. And I'm quoting here, he said this will happen come what may. So how realistic is that?
There's a lot of rhetoric behind what Rishi Sunak says, but he has made this Rwanda policy central to his re-election strategy. Stop the boats, that's really one of the slogans that he likes to put out as much as he can. And what we're expecting is that as soon as these flights do take off, and some flights will take off now that this law has passed, so as soon as that happens, that he will then call for re-elections in the UK, basically at the back of this Rwanda policy.
DW's Birgit Maass with the latest from London. Birgit, as always, thank you. All right, I'm joined now by Nicola Palmer. She's a legal academic and an expert in international law at King's College London. Ms. Palmer, it's good to have you with us. We've heard from the United Nations that there are concerns that this bill, this law, could violate what's known as the principle of non-refoulement or non-return. Could you explain to our viewers exactly what this principle is and how it applies in this case?
So non-refoulement relates to Article 33 of the 1951 Refugee Convention. And at its heart, what it's about is preventing states from sending people to another country where they are at risk of being threatened, having their life or their freedom threatened on account of their race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. And now in November last year, it was the UK Supreme Court found that this deal with Rwanda raised substantial grounds to believe that there would be a risk of refoulement. The risk was not of ill treatment in Rwanda, but concerns regarding Rwanda's individual refugee determination process could result in an individual being sent to another country where such ill treatment and threat to their life or freedom could occur.
Okay, so the problem then is not with Rwanda itself, but the British government. It has tried to address this problem by declaring Rwanda a safe country. So is it addressing the wrong country?
That is exactly the issue. At the heart of this is the UK externalizing all of its obligations under the Refugee Convention onto another state. Now, the other state happens to be Rwanda in this instance, because that's the state that they have a migration partnership agreement and now a treaty with. But the real issue is whether another state can defer all of its obligations, and particularly a first world state, onto a developing country state.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what are the legalities involved here? I mean, is it legally questionable for two countries? In this case, we've got the United Kingdom and Rwanda agreeing to such a migration transfer. I mean, what's the legal problem then?
So there is certainly an argument that could be made under the Refugee Convention relating to responsibility sharing, that there is an obligation, there's an implicit obligation on states to determine whether the people who arrive on their shores are refugees or not. Now, this was raised in the legal proceedings before the UK courts at the Court of Appeal stage, but it was not appealed to the Supreme Court level. At the Supreme Court level, the basis on which the agreement with Rwanda was found to be unlawful was in relation to this issue of non-reformal. Mm-hmm. So the issue became one of whether or not that was the protection that was offered by the Refugee Convention. Now, I think there are routes to challenge both the responsibility sharing route, in which case we have to talk about states' responsibility under the Refugee Convention to determine the refugee status of individuals who arrive on those shores. Yeah. And currently, under the immigration bill, that is not possible here in the UK. So the UK is essentially, under this current Safety of Rwanda bill, deferring all of its international legal obligations onto another country. And in fact, it says as much in the bill itself, in which case a safe country, the definition of a safe country under this bill, is one that meets all of the UK's international legal obligations under the Refugee Convention.
Okay, Ms. Palmer, let me just ask you one question before we run out of time. I mean, have we seen this case before? I'm thinking of the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. She signed an agreement with Turkey that involved Turkey receiving money, and in exchange for that, it agreed to house migrants, to keep them from making the trip to Europe. Are these two agreements, are they comparable?
Well, we are seeing this rise in state practice of these regressive safe third country agreements, but there have been other forms of restraint on them, including that an individual could only be sent to another safe third country if they have a connection with that country. That is removed under the Safety of Rwanda bill. And in addition, there are constraints in relation to the rights of appeals of those individuals to challenge these decisions. Now, what we see here in the UK is the route to those appeals has now been significantly narrowed through only allowing for appeal before the UK courts on individual grounds rather than on general grounds in relation to the safety or rights of Rwanda.
Nicola Palmer with King's College London. Ms. Palmer, we appreciate your time and your analysis today. Thank you.